I think the Indian SIP investor is getting more and more educated, more and more seasoned, and we have seen in the recent cycles that actually when the markets correct or fall, we have seen no panic or no change in the behavior in terms of the medium to long term investing. I think over the last 5 years versus the previous 5 years, there has been a change in behavior. And I think over the next 5 years, whenever you have such corrective phases, I think investors will learn from the previous experience and continue the investing behavior, keeping in mind the 3 to 5 year perspective. I think dividend yield funds, as the name suggests, build a portfolio which has a reasonably attractive dividend yield. So you get a steady source of income from that dividend yield creation. Flexi Cap category is a good product to invest in as a first time product for the first time investor. And इस प्रोडक्ट में बहुत फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होती है फंड मैनेजर के पास टू मूव फ्रॉम लार्ज कैप टू मिड कैप small cap and maintain different kind of mixes. In the next 6 months, I think the focus of the equity markets globally is when the rates will peak and when do the rate cuts start happening.
हेलो फ्रेंड्स, मेरा नाम नम्रता अरोरा है एंड वेलकम बैक टू येट अनदर एक्साइटिंग एपिसोड ऑफ म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात। जैसे आप सब जानते हैं कि म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात में हम ग्लोबल और इंडियन इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस, कमोडिटीज, स्टॉक मार्केट एंड ऑफ कोर्स म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात करते हैं। और हर एपिसोड में हम एक एक्सपीरियंस प्रोफेशनल को लेके आते हैं, समवन विद अ लॉट ऑफ नॉलेज एंड एक्सपीरियंस इन द स्टॉक मार्केट स्पेस। तो आज भी हमारे साथ है समवन वेरी स्पेशल। टुडे वी हैव विद अस मिस्टर राहुल बाइजल। सो मिस्टर राहुल जो हैं वो सीनियर फंड मैनेजर हैं फॉर इक्विटीज एट HDFC म्यूचुअल फंड, और उनका जो टोटल एक्सपीरियंस है दैट्स स्पैनिंग ओवर 20 इयर्स इन इक्विटी रिसर्च एंड फंड मैनेजमेंट। HDFC एसेट मैनेजमेंट कंपनी ज्वाइन करने से पहले, विच वाज इन जुलाई 2022, ही स्पेंट 6 इयर्स विद सुंदरम म्यूचुअल फंड एज सीनियर इक्विटी फंड मैनेजर, जहां वो बहुत सारी स्कीम्स हैंडल कर रहे थे इन द लार्ज कैप, लार्ज एंड मिड कैप, हाइब्रिड इक्विटी, फोकस्ड एंड थीमेटिक फंड कैटेगरीज। उन्होंने काफी एक्कोलेड्स भी जीते हैं फ्रॉम डिफरेंट रिसर्च एजेंसीज फॉर हिज परफॉर्मेंस इन द अबव कैटेगरीज। ये भारतीय एक्सा लाइफ इंश्योरेंस के साथ भी काम कर चुके हैं, TVF कैपिटल विच वाज फर्स्ट वॉयजर एडवाइजर्स, HSBC सिक्योरिटीज एंड क्रेडिट स्विस सिक्योरिटीज के साथ भी काम कर चुके हैं। मिस्टर राहुल अर्नड हिज PGDM MBA फ्रॉम इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मैनेजमेंट कैलकाटा इन 1999 and he has also completed his BE in electronics and communication from Delhi College of Engineering, University of Delhi. Hello everyone and welcome back to Mutual Funds Ki Baat. Today we have with us Mr. Rahul from HDFC AMC. Welcome Rahul, and let's start with the questions. So Rahul, जैसे आपको पता है कि equity markets are packed with surprises for an investor, right? And it can really increase the anxiety levels. और अगर हम recent past की बात करें तो हमने बहुत सारे जो retail investors हैं, they're not necessarily happy with the markets and with the portfolio performance. तो अगर हम देखें दूसरी साइड पे, वी हैव मेनी टॉप एनालिस्ट्स एंड रेटिंग एजेंसीज एंड इवन मल्टीलैटरल बैंक्स जो बोल रहे हैं कि इंडिया इज लाइक अ ब्राइट स्पॉट इन द पोस्ट पैंडेमिक ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी, व्हिच इज ऑफ कोर्स स्टिल अफेक्टेड बाय जियोपॉलिटिकल टेंशंस, इन्फ्लेशन, इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ रहे हैं। तो इन योर ओपिनियन जो इंडियन स्टॉक मार्केट है, कैन इट रियली कंटिन्यू टू विथस्टैंड सच प्रेशर्स?
Sure. So this is one question, but a lot of mini questions in that. So I'll try to answer, through 3-4 perspectives. Uh, so firstly, see, जो equity markets होते हैं, इनका जो return होता है और जो movement होता है, it is not in a secular manner. You heard of bull markets and consolidation markets and bear markets. So they move in cycles. So if you look at the returns, for example, over the last 15 years, the large cap index, it's been a very steady 15% kind of compounding in the benchmark level. And even if you look at large cap index, mid cap index, small cap index, and you don't look at point to point returns, but you average out the returns by looking at the rolling returns. We have seen that 5-year rolling returns, 10-year rolling returns have been a 12 to 15% kind of a compounding range. And we use rolling returns because it averages out, So in between, you'll have phases like in the last 1.5 years, where if you look at returns from end 21 to now, the returns have been negative for the indices. So that's how the equity markets move. They don't move every year in a secular manner, but they move in spurts up and down, and that's why we say that investors should have portfolios with at least 5, 7, 10 year perspective, and that averages out the returns during such up and down cycles. So that's one. Secondly, जहाँ तक इंडिया का सवाल है, आई थिंक हमारा जो ईयर बुक भी आया है बिगिनिंग ऑफ द ईयर में, उसका टाइटल है इंडिया इज ओएसिस इन द डेजर्ट. और इसमें जरा मैं 2 मिनट स्पेंड करना चाहूँगा कि अगर आप दुनिया में देखें अभी, तो जो ग्रोथ है वो काफ़ी स्केर्स है इन मोस्ट कंट्रीज इन द वर्ल्ड. वेस्ट में तो रिसेशन की बात हो रही है, और स्लो डाउन तो आएगा ही. द क्वेश्चन इज हाउ लॉन्ग एंड हाउ बिग. जहाँ तक इंडिया का सवाल है, India is well accepted in the global markets as a country, as a $3 trillion economy, which can grow at least 5-6% real GDP growth for the next 5 years. And that's why this $3 to $5 trillion path is being talked about. So I think as long as that story is alive, and if we can reach there, that means about 10-11% nominal GDP kind of a growth. So I think that will make India probably one of the most attractive structural growth stories. So I think that part of the story hasn't changed. But yeah, markets have been in a corrective mode, and in my view, have entered a consolidation mode. And once the consolidation phase is over, I think you could have a different phase of the market.
Fair enough. So it's not something that we have too much to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you have to have longer term views, and in short term, you keep having these corrective phases and consolidation phases.
Okay. So अब अगर हम बात करें तो many analysts have also noted कि जो retail participation रहा है, it remains low in the Indian equity market because of expensive valuations, और ये fear भी रहता है कि there's a potential cut in the earnings in the March quarter. So do you think equity markets could recover अगर RBI जो है ये rate hike को pause करता है? And also, can we attribute increase in deposit या फिर fixed income instrument की जो rates हैं वो बढ़ रहे हैं? Could this be another reason for retail participation to go down? And if the rates were to go up further, will that help the equity markets?
So, as far as interest rates are concerned, I think it's a very important question. Or next 6 months, I think the focus of the equity markets locally, globally is when the rates will peak, and when do the rate cuts start happening. So whenever visibility of rate cuts will come, whether it's in US or whether it's in India, I think that will be a positive catalyst at the macro level for equity markets. And yes, in a rising rate scenario, like has been the case last few months, and अगर आप देखेंगे इस साल के returns on the fixed deposits or on some fixed income instruments, the coupons are attractive. So you'll see some allocation also happening. A lot of investors will like to lock in, such attractive fixed deposit coupons. So both will happen. So like I said, it's a consolidation phase, and yes, rate cuts timing, whether it happens end of this year or early next year, I think will be a big macro catalyst in the positive direction for the equity markets.
Okay. But in terms of retail participation, how do you see this going?
So as far as the retail participation is concerned, it has been getting wider and deeper across India through the mutual fund route, as well as through direct participation in the equity markets. And as far as mutual funds are concerned, we know the SIP monthly collections have actually crossed 30,000 crores, which has actually been a big source of support for the market, especially last year when FIs have been selling. So I think SIP route is well accepted, and the track record of returns across various schemes in the market has been fairly attractive for SIP investments to continue. So I think that part of allocations, in my view, should continue, the core SIP allocations. As far as direct retail participation is concerned, yes, the volumes were exceptionally high last year, and we have seen some signs of cool off over there. But I think again, those are like part and part of the cycle. When the trailing returns become a bit weak, we do see some volumes cool off, and when the returns get more attractive in terms of experience, we see increase in volumes. So volumes going up and down is part and parcel of the market. But more importantly, I think the SIP behavior, I think, is a well-established, well-entrenched behavior in the Indian retail investor, and it's a very big positive development for the mutual fund industry and for the retail investors.
So now, since we are already talking about SIPs, maybe I'll just ask you this question related to SIPs. क्योंकि अगर हम SIPs की बात करें तो mutual fund SIPs hit a record high of close to 14,000 crores in Jan 23. But जो equity markets में volatility है in the recent past has somewhat hurt the returns. और अगर हम equity market returns को देखें तो अगर वो बहुत लंबे समय के लिए stagnate हो जाते हैं, do you think this could impact the SIP inflows? Yeah, I mean, we've seen in the past, right? अगर हम average SIP holding period देखें तो वो करीब 4 साल है, less than 4 years. So do you think this trend would continue?
I think the Indian SIP investors getting more and more educated, more and more seasoned, and we have seen in the recent cycles that actually when the markets correct or fall, we have seen no panic or no change in the behavior in terms of the medium to long term investing. I think over the last 5 years versus the previous 5 years, there has been a change in behavior, and I think over the next 5 years, whenever you have such corrective phases, I think investors will learn from the previous experience and continue the investing behavior, keeping in mind the 3 to 5 year perspective. So I'm quite hopeful and constructive on that front.
So you're positive कि SIP inflows पे शायद उतना impact नहीं होगा.
Likely, most likely.
All right. Okay. So now there's a very interesting category that I want to talk to you about. So, एक general understanding होती है for an investor, for any investors like you and me. The belief is कि जो mid और small cap होते हैं, they're relatively riskier compared to the large cap and flexi cap or multi cap as a category. And losses are generally higher in markets like these, right? तो अगर हम देखें तो S&P BSE मिड कैप इंडेक्स एंड S&P BSE स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स ने जो है रिटर्न्स over the past 3 months are close to negative 4.5%. तो ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? And would you recommend an investor to exit from the mid cap and small cap funds and move towards large cap, or you advise them to stay with the current investments?
See, I think when we invest in mutual funds, we have a medium to long term perspective, and looking at 3 month and 6 month returns always doesn't give the right perspective. तो आप देखेंगे स्पेसिफिकली आपने मिड कैप स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स के बारे में पूछा, पिछले 3 महीने के रिटर्न्स नेगेटिव हैं, and the indices themselves were up more than 50-60% higher. On the back of those returns, you are seeing some correction, like you said in the recent past. So this correction also has to be looked on the back of significant returns in the indices in 2020 and 21. तो जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि मार्केट में मूवमेंट ऐसे ही होता है कि यू हैव फेजेस ऑफ राइजिंग मार्केट्स एंड फेजेस ऑफ करेक्शंस एंड कंसोलिडेशन. So what you are experiencing last few months, last 1 year is a phase of correction and consolidation. So उस नज़रिए से देखना चाहिए, and clearly one should not panic on either of these categories or any of the mutual funds, because please keep in mind that when you invested in these, you had a medium to long term perspective, and I think, like I said before, if the India story moves from $3 trillion to $5 trillion over the next 5 years, I think that means that the bullish case for equities is likely to continue.
बट बस मुझे बस ये लगता है कि एज एन इन्वेस्टर, राइट, जब आप नेगेटिव रिटर्न्स देखते हैं अपने पोर्टफोलियो में, यू टेंड टू पैनिक. सो आई थिंक इट्स मोर बिहेवियरल. व्हाट यू सेइंग इज एब्सोल्युटली राइट कि हमारा मीडियम टू लॉन्ग टर्म विजन तो होना ही चाहिए जब हम इक्विटीज में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं. बट I guess that panic factor comes in, and that is where the problem lies. So you are basically recommending कि अभी हमें कुछ नहीं करना चाहिए. We should stay invested because this is just a phase and this will pass, right?
Yeah, we are in a correction consolidation phase, and that should also pass sometime later this year, yeah, in my view.
Sure. Okay. Okay. तो अब अगर हम बात करें about large cap funds which are failing to beat their benchmark index in the recent times, right? And I guess this started 2018 के बाद जब हमने benchmarking shift करी थी from price return index to total return index. So जो large cap funds हैं, are they really struggling to beat their benchmark indices, and should we consider investing in maybe passive funds in the large cap space at least? So, I mean, what is your take on the large cap space, index investing versus passive investing as well?
Sure. So I think that's an important debate going on, and my view on this is that see, like in every category, whether it's multi-cap or flexi-cap or large cap, you'll find a few schemes, few fund managers who are creating consistent alpha, and at the same time you'll find schemes which are underperforming. So that happens in every category. In large caps, yeah, because the investable universe is very restricted, and at least 80% has to be in the top 100 names. The challenges to create alpha probably are a bit more versus the other categories. And I think, but as you rightly said, the challenge is to continue a sustainable track record of creating alpha, and as long as one can do that, then the competition from passive schemes should remain far. But yeah, if you create a long-term track record of inconsistent performance, those schemes, like in any other category, there will be some loss of market share to the passives for those reasons. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, see, active और passive funds के बीच में debate तो मुझे लगता है कि is a never-ending debate, like you rightly said, and there's no right or wrong answer to it, right? So both have their own sides of the story which are positive, and
Yes,
so
absolutely. Both have the pros and cons,
okay,
yes, as you said.
both have their own. Yeah, yeah. So I think it's more dependent on the investor, maybe, if he's willing to take that bet on the fund manager, and if the investor believes that the fund manager would generate the alpha for him. Yeah.
Yes.
ओके ओके तो अब जो है थोड़ा डिविडेंड यील्ड फंड्स के बारे में बात करते हैं. सो इन योर ओपिनियन ये जो फंड्स होते हैं डिविडेंड यील्ड फंड्स, आर दे अ गुड इन्वेस्टमेंट फ्रॉम रिटायरमेंट प्लानिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू? क्योंकि अगर हम डिविडेंड यील्ड फंड्स की बात करें, सो दे टेंड टू इन्वेस्ट इन स्टॉक्स जो ऑब्वियसली बेटर डिविडेंड यील्ड देते हैं. सो कैन वी से कि ये फंड्स जो हैं वैल्यू स्टॉक्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं? Because, or do you think value strategy, being conservative in nature, is good for accumulating, say, the retirement corpus?
I would agree with what you said. I think dividend yield funds, as the name suggests, build a portfolio which has a reasonably attractive dividend yield, and plus the stocks also have some reasonable compounding over the long term, and that adds to the return as well. So, for someone who's looking for slightly safer, more defensive dividend yield options are a good option, and certainly a good option for retirement planning as well.
Okay. So we can look at dividend yield funds from a retirement planning.
Sure.
Okay. अब अगर हम बात करें पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर रेशियो की, बहुत सारे जो इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं, दे वेरी कंसर्न्ड अबाउट हाई पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर रेशियो, राइट? स्पेशली इन द म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम्स. और हमें लगता है कि व्हेन इट कम्स टू हाई पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर रेशियो, डू यू थिंक it would impact the returns of an equity fund? Kyunki, is there any specific, or let me ask you a very specific question. So do you think there's an ideal portfolio turnover ratio, which an investor can look at? Or kitna zyada hona chahiye, right? So a fund which has very high portfolio turnover, can we conclude कि उसके जो stocks हैं, जो fund में stocks हैं, they're merely trading stocks and शायद वो लंबे समय तक उस fund में नहीं रहेंगे? So what is your take on that?
So जहाँ तक पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर का सवाल है, देखिए, आई थिंक मेरा मानना ये है कि जो पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर होता है वो काफ़ी हद तक डिपेंड करता है in many schemes on the volatility in that year also. In more steady years, जहाँ volatility कम होती है तो usually churn कम होता है, और sometimes in more volatile years with more up and down trending markets थोड़ा churn बढ़ भी जाता है. So I think एक तो churn को isolation में नहीं देखना चाहिए. It can vary from year to year depending on volatility. And दूसरा, I think churn needs to be seen in the context of returns. If someone is able to produce, attractive returns, maybe with slightly higher churn, as long as the return profile adjusted for volatility is attractive, तो I think थोड़ा higher churn को भी ignore कर सकते हैं. And but more importantly is how the return profile is managed and how the volatility is managed. But at the same time, बहुत ज़्यादा churn भी अच्छा नहीं है होता, because बहुत ज़्यादा churn, I don't have a number in mind, but clearly very high churn also indicates lack of consistency in thinking and lack of conviction in the core portfolio. But I would say don't look for a fixed churn every year, but a churn range could be like 15 to 30, 40% maybe. Nothing specific, but too high levels are also clearly not healthy.
So when you say too high levels, what would that be?
There's no particular number in mind because it varies from scheme to scheme. But जैसा कि मैंने कहा, जो range है broadly, I think depending on what kind of a year, depending on the fund manager style, and depending on the outcome, the return versus volatility. If someone can produce a good risk-adjusted return at 30% churn versus someone who does lower churn at 15%, but the risk-adjusted return is lower, I would say between the two, even the second one, the 30% churn one is also okay. Yeah. So that's the way to look at it. Yeah. But it shouldn't be too high as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough. Okay. अब अगर हम देखें इन द we've seen in the past कि जो year on year performance रहता है of sectors and say large mid small cap category that keeps changing, and इस साल का जो winner है may not be at the top in the next year, right? In fact, most likely will end up at the bottom. तो अगर हम बात करें तो बहुत सारे जो इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं दे रिस्क देयर इन्वेस्टमेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ ट्राइंग टू टाइम द स्टॉक मार्केट, क्योंकि उनको लगता है कि दे आर ट्राइंग टू गेट द बेस्ट वाइल चेजिंग दीज परफॉर्मर्स. तो इस अगर तो हम देखें तो जो फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स हैं फॉर एग्जांपल वो ऑटोमेटिकली रीबैलेंस करते हैं हमारी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को टू बेसिकली गेट द बेस्ट अपॉर्चुनिटी टू ग्रो आवर इन्वेस्टमेंट. तो आपके ओपिनियन में जो फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स होते हैं आर दे अ गुड ऑप्शन इन वॉलेटाइल मार्केट्स, एंड वुड यू रेकमेंड दीज फंड्स टू अ फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर? तो मानो मैं अभी अपना इन्वेस्टमेंट शुरू कर रही हूँ इन द इक्विटी मार्केट, वुड दिस बी अ फंड दैट आई शुड कंसिडर?
Yes, I think Flexi Cap category is a good product to invest in as a first time product for the first time investor. And इस प्रोडक्ट में बहुत फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होती है फंड मैनेजर के पास टू मूव फ्रॉम लार्ज कैप टू मिड कैप, स्मॉल कैप, एंड मेंटेन डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ मिक्सेस. एंड अगर फंड मैनेजर मैनेजेस द रिटर्न साइकिल्स बिटवीन लार्ज कैप, मिड कैप, स्मॉल कैप well, then I think has potential to give very attractive returns. And in a way, for a first-time investor, he doesn't have to take the call ki how much allocation I need to do in large, mid, and small cap, and वो outsource कर रहा है अपना decision making to the fund manager. So I think yeah, flexi cap are very powerful products, and they should definitely be looked at as first-time products for first-time investors. Yeah.
तो मुझे लगता है कि आइडियली स्पीकिंग अगर हमारा इक्विटी में इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन लॉन्ग टर्म है, 5-10 साल का टाइम होराइजन है, तो टाइमिंग द मार्केट इज एनीवेज नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट, right? Ideally it won't matter if you're timing the market maybe 5 years down the line, but since investors do this, I think it was important to ask you this question. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about commodities such as gold and silver, right? I mean, I think as investors, बहुत सारे investors को commodities में, commodity funds में invest करने बहुत ज़्यादा interest रहता है, and of course, commodities are a good hedge for equity in your overall portfolio because of the negative correlation between equity and commodities. तो क्या हमें इक्विटी गोल्ड और सिल्वर के कॉम्बो ईटीएफ्स में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, और शुड वी जस्ट स्टिक टू मे बी जस्ट अ गोल्ड ईटीएफ or just a silver ETF. So, how would you recommend an investor to manage their commodities funds?
सो जहाँ तक कि गोल्ड सिल्वर ETFs का सवाल है, आई थिंक आई एम मोर एन एक्सपर्ट ऑन इक्विटीज, बट आई थिंक दीज प्रोडक्ट्स आर गुड प्रोडक्ट्स फॉर डाइवर्सिफिकेशन. और स्पेसिफिकली गोल्ड ETF आप देखेंगे तो लॉन्ग टर्म रिटर्न्स हैव बीन रीजनेबली अट्रैक्टिव. And typically, I advise 5-10% allocation as part of diversification should be there in gold or silver kind of combination products. And I think the Indian women have a great track record of investing in this commodity by way of habits and by way of fashion. So I think, and they've done a very good job in creating returns as part of this purchase decisions. So yeah, jokes apart, but yeah, I think as a allocation diversification product, I think these are good products to look at.
Okay, so maximum 15% allocation can be given to it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, okay. So I guess there's another very interesting category. So we have something called as MNC funds, right? And आपके opinion में जो first time investors होते हैं, equity investors, should they look at funds like the MNC funds? तो अगर हम देखें तो how different are these funds going to be say from a regular flexi cap या जो multi cap funds होते हैं? और in terms of risk also, can you explain a little bit about these funds? तो क्या ये funds हमारा ऑल सीजन फंड डेफिनेशन या जो कोर पोर्टफोलियो फंड्स बोलते हैं उसमें आएगा, एंड और शुड दे बी अ पार्ट ऑफ आवर सैटेलाइट पोर्टफोलियो? तो बेसिकली आई एम आस्किंग यू दिस टू अंडरस्टैंड हमारे पोर्टफोलियो में एमएनसी फंड्स की पोजीशनिंग कैसे होनी चाहिए.
Sure. So, जहाँ तक MNC fund की positioning है, it's MNC funds are part of the thematic fund category, and thematic fund category usually fit the satellite category in terms of creating the portfolio. So जो 5, 10, 15, 20% तक जो thematic allocation करना होता है, they fit that bucket, and versus the main category schemes in which the core of the portfolio is built. जहाँ तक का प्रोडक्ट का सवाल है, इनफैक्ट HDFC is currently launched the MNC fund at our end, and the NFO is going on. For the positioning of that product, I'll just spend 2 minutes. I think the product in the past we have seen, if you look at the benchmark of MNC index, it has a track record of being very defensive. In the sense कि जब market sharply ऊपर जाता है, so this product index also goes up, but not to the same extent as the market goes, but at the same time it's defensive because जब corrections आती हैं, sharp corrections आती हैं, and हमने study भी करी है, it's and the details are there in the NFO PPT, तो ये उतना नहीं गिरता है जितना कि market गिरता है. So it acts as a defensive in terms of the portfolio behavior. And the companies are well established in India, 50, 70, 90 years longevity, and will probably continue another 50, 70, 90 years and more. Strong boards, great brands, which all of us experience in our daily lives, and even when we go shopping. So I think the portfolio consists of quality companies and run by strong boards. And so it's a great product for diversification. And so if you have a core allocation portfolio of a few main category funds, this can come as a good satellite product for diversification. So that's what the broad positioning of the MNC fund is.
So you would recommend what percentage of an investor's portfolio in the MNC fund?
Typically 5, 10 or 15%, that kind of a range.
Okay, okay, fair enough. All right. तो अब अगर हम देखें तो हम हमेशा जो है अपने स्पीकर से उनकी इन्वेस्टमेंट जर्नी के बारे में पूछते हैं, बिकॉज योर लर्निंग्स आर गोइंग टू हेल्प अस इन बिकमिंग बेटर इन्वेस्टर्स. सो हमें थोड़ा अपनी इक्विटी इन्वेस्टिंग जर्नी के बारे में कुछ बताएंगे?
So yeah, as far as my equity journey is concerned, it's been a really long journey. I think I came to Bombay in '99, and that's when the study of the stock markets began. And initially, I began my career in the sell side, doing equity research, and then moved on to fund management about 17 years back. So it's been a long journey, but I think in the investing journey, having begun on the equity research side has clearly helped a lot because that gives you the skill to the understanding of businesses, understanding of companies. If you want to go deeper, that analyst hat also one can wear, and the fund manager has to wear both hats. At times the portfolio manager hat as well as the analyst hat. So I do recommend that spending a few years initially in on the research side does help shape the investing career better for buy side professionals, in my view. So yeah, that's been the summary of my journey, and it's been a long journey so far, and I guess more miles to go.
More, yeah, absolutely. So, from an investor's point of view, क्या आप हमें कुछ advice देना चाहेंगे as investors? What are those simple things that we should keep in mind, or maybe for a first-time investor जो अभी equity markets में enter कर रहे हैं, maybe through direct stocks or through equity mutual funds, but then कुछ advice आपकी तरफ से for everyone?
Sure. I guess a few things I'd like to say is, I think it's always a good thing to begin investing early in your investment journey. And the earlier you begin, I guess the better wealth creation you'll have over the long run. And do spend time, reading a lot, and also, watching some of these business channels. It helps develop a good perspective, make it a habit, and some mistakes will be made initially in the investment journey, but try to make them as small as possible, and very important to learn from them. I think all of us have made mistakes initially in our investment careers. And like I said before, I think SIP is a great way to begin the investment journey, and build a portfolio of products around that, and keep topping those SIPs up with lump sums, or even incremental SIPs every year as your savings potential keeps increasing. So those would be some of my recommendations. Yeah.
Sure. Perfect. Okay. Now, आपने बात करी about reading books, right? So, how about some giving us some book recommendations? So, what are some of the books that, as investors, we can read to get better knowledge?
So I guess there are a lot of good books available out there, and I think these days you find a lot of good information on social media as well. And the younger generation follows a lot of Twitter accounts as well. They know what to follow. When it comes to books, I think books by Howard Marks is something which I recommend. And my favorite book from Howard Marks is a book called The Most Important Thing. I would recommend that as a book. And I think every time I pick up that book, once in a few years, there's something new to pick up and relate to. So if there's one book I would like to recommend, it's The Most Important Thing by Howard Marks.
Sure. Okay. Sure. Thank you so much for your time, Rahul, and for all the wonderful answers that you've given. I'm sure हमारे जो viewers थे उनको बहुत ज़्यादा takeaways मिले होंगे from this particular session. So thank you for your time and for all the recommendations.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a wonderful session that was with Mr. Rahul. I'm sure आप सबको बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला होगा, and I'm sure you guys are waiting for the next episode. तो क्विकली जो भी हमने पॉइंट्स डिस्कस किए वो मैं आपके लिए समराइज कर देती हूँ. तो सबसे पहले हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि अगर हम देखें तो काफ़ी टॉप एनालिस्ट, रेटिंग एजेंसीज एंड इवन मल्टीलैटरल बैंक्स इंडिया को एक ब्राइट स्पॉट बोल रहे हैं इन द पोस्ट पैंडेमिक ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी. Mr. Rahul says कि इंडिया जो है एक oasis की तरह है, oasis of calm and stability amongst the global headwinds. लेकिन अगर हम equity markets में returns की बात करें तो they are not secular in nature और वो काफ़ी cyclical होते हैं. तो जब ये consolidation phase खत्म हो जाएगा, that is when the equity markets should go up. फिर हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि अगर हम SIP inflows देखें तो they touched a record high in Jan 2023. 13,856 crores in the month of Jan 2023. लेकिन अगर हम मार्केट वॉलिटिलिटी देखें तो उसकी वजह से रिटर्न्स पे इम्पैक्ट हुआ है। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि अगर देखा जाए तो एसआईपी इनफ्लोज काफ़ी बड़े हैं, विच इज़ अ वेरी पॉजिटिव साइन। और अगर हम इंडियन एसआईपी इन्वेस्टर्स की बात करें तो वो काफ़ी एजुकेटेड हो रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से हम ज़्यादा इन्वेस्टर बिहेवियर में चेंज नहीं देख रहे हैं, इवन दो द मार्केट्स आर फॉलिंग। फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि जो S&P BSE मिड कैप इंडेक्स है और जो S&P BSE स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स है, उसने जो है उन्होंने -4.3 -4.5% रिटर्न्स दिए हैं इन द लास्ट 3 मंथ्स, जिसकी वजह से जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं वो पैनिक कर रहे हैं। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि जब हम मिड कैप या हम स्मॉल कैप फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो हमारा लॉन्ग टर्म विजन होना चाहिए। 2020-2021 में जो है BSE मिड कैप BSE स्मॉल कैप ने जो है बहुत बड़ा जंप भी देखा था। तो अभी जो हम देख रहे हैं वो एक करेक्शन है आफ्टर दिस जंप, और जो इन्वेस्टर है उनको पैनिक नहीं होना चाहिए। फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि जो डिविडेंड यील्ड फंड्स होते हैं, क्या वो रिटायरमेंट प्लानिंग के लिए अच्छे माने जाते हैं। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि डिविडेंड यील्ड फंड्स डेफिनेटली अच्छे होते हैं और एक इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियो का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं, क्योंकि इनमें जो है आपको स्टेडी इनकम मिल सकती है थ्रू द डिविडेंड्स, एंड एट द सेम टाइम आपको कंपाउंडिंग बेनिफिट मिल सकता है ओवर द लॉन्ग टर्म। फिर हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि जो काफ़ी इन्वेस्टर्स हैं वो पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर को लेके काफ़ी कंसर्न रहते हैं इन द म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम्स। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि जो पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर रेशियो होता है वो हर साल चेंज होता है डिपेंडिंग ऑन द वॉलिटिलिटी। तो एज एन इन्वेस्टर अगर आपको रिस्क एडजस्टेड रिटर्न अच्छा मिल रहा है फ्रॉम योर म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम, तो पोर्टफोलियो टर्नओवर रेशियो के बारे में इतना नहीं सोचना चाहिए। फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि जो फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स होते हैं, क्या वो एक फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियो का हिस्सा हो सकते हैं। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि डेफिनेटली जो फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स हैं वो फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स में पैसा इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स जो है अक्रॉस मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन इन्वेस्ट करते हैं विदाउट एनी रिस्ट्रिक्शन। तो अफेक्टिवली जो फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर हैं वो अपने पोर्टफोलियो को जो है आउटसोर्स कर रहे हैं टू अ सीजन फंड मैनेजर जब वो एक फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं। फिर हमने MNC फंड्स के बारे में भी बात की, एंड मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि जो MNC फंड्स होते हैं वो थीमेटिक फंड कैटेगरी में आते हैं एंड दे आर अ पार्ट ऑफ योर सैटेलाइट पोर्टफोलियो। तो ये जो MNC फंड्स होते हैं ये तब अच्छा करते हैं जब इक्विटी मार्केट्स अच्छा कर रही होती है, ये ऊपर जा रही होती है, बट नॉट एज हाई। लेकिन क्योंकि ये फंड्स जो है डिफेंसिव हैं इन नेचर, तो जब मार्केट्स करेक्ट होती हैं तब ये फंड्स उतना नहीं गिरते हैं जितना मार्केट गिरती है। तो इसीलिए अगर आपको MNC फंड्स में पैसा इन्वेस्ट करना है तो आप 10 से 15% एलोकेशन इन फंड्स में कर सकते हैं। फिर हमने मिस्टर राहुल से उनकी कुछ लर्निंग्स के बारे में पूछा इन दी इक्विटी मार्केट। तो मिस्टर राहुल सेज कि सबसे पहले जो हमें जो है अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स जितना जल्दी हो सके उतना जल्दी इक्विटी मार्केट्स में शुरू करनी चाहिए टू ट्रूली एंजॉय वेल्थ क्रिएशन इन द लॉन्ग रन। ही सेज कि इक्विटी मार्केट्स में हर कोई गलती करेगा, लेकिन हमें अपनी गलतियों से सीखना चाहिए। SIPs एक बहुत अच्छा तरीका है टू मेक आवर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन द इक्विटी मार्केट, एंड आइडियली हमें जो अपनी SIPs को टॉप अप करना चाहिए एवरी टाइम हमारी जब इनकम या सैलरी बढ़ती है। फिर हमने मिस्टर राहुल से उनकी कुछ बुक रिकमेंडेशंस के बारे में पूछा, एंड ही सेज द बुक बाय हार्वर्ड मार्क्स, द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज अ गुड रीड। So I hope आप सबको ये एपिसोड अच्छा लगा हो. I hope you guys had some amazing learnings from this particular episode. Please do like this video, share it with everyone, and please do subscribe to the Groww Mutual Fund channel. And thank you so much for watching.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.